What's going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here for Your Overwatch. The new Lucio has been out in full effect. What do we think about this character? Is he still sick? Is he a lot harder to play? I'm going to weigh in on what I think and a few tips that I have come to understand based upon the value I think he provides to the team, as well as we can discuss a bit where this puts Overwatch as the team fighting game that it is. Well, first and foremost, I'll say this. A whole bunch of old rules that we had about Lucio are now flipped on its head. I think before, because his healing aura was so unimpactful and sort of small in effect, that the big speed aura that lets you amp it up was way more powerful than amping up heals unless you desperately needed the heals. Now it's like the opposite, because when you're dealing like 50 healing in your cute little aura, and on top of that, it's just simply harder to get value out of the speed boost aura, I think you should be prioritizing healing amp over speed amp now. Now, once in a while, if you're trying to quickly move in and out of positioning, speed amp is just as good as it used to be, but the percentage of time where that's applicable in the game has just diminished a bit, whereas before I think it was more than often what you should be looking to do, whereas now it's better to try to get yourself in position to get that big powerful aura amp heal, because that's going to get you to be winning more duels. Now, the interesting thing about this, I think, is how this affects the entire game, because when you take a hero that is so core to how engagements play, and both teams now have lessened effect on it, engagements on the whole in Overwatch play a bit different than they used to. And it's a little bit difficult to quantify. I think overall it's pretty easy to say that the new Lucio is just about as crucial to your game as the old Lucio was, but now there may start to be small little cracks and crevices where we might start to consider not having Lucio, which I think is still a big step forward in the hero diversity issue, but maybe not exactly where some people would want it to be. Upon reviewing these changes, I had a few theories on where I thought that the game would go, and as far as I can tell, you let me know if you disagree in the comment section down below, I think they've kind of come to fruition. Though I must say pro players are pretty slow to make adjustments to their gameplay, even when big changes happen. Because you can expect pro players to be really good at Lucio, they're not going to be the ones that are drastically affected by these changes. The new Lucio can get the same amount of value, but just in a more difficult way. So with that being said, if you're good enough, you can get as much value and more out of Lucio, but now you're going to have to command the character in a much more tight and refined way. The short answer is that Lucio, if you play him well, almost is always good. If you play a sick Lucio, you can still put him on every single map and every single team comp. It does not matter. He just does so much. The only times where you might consider not having a Lucio is, I'm thinking like on defense when you're setting up a big ranged crossfire. Maybe you could get away without having him. I'm thinking about spots where you sort of concave down onto something like Numbani defense first, where people usually take high ground positioning around it. Maybe you have hit scan set up there and Ana, and you don't really need necessarily to run around with speed boost, but like I said before, speed boost is a smaller aspect of his kit now, and it's more for ferrying around and doing little mini pockets to move characters where they need to be, but more importantly even, to amp up a big impactful heal boost. So with that being said, despite their goal of trying to minimize the must-pick area of Lucio, I think they mostly just made Lucio harder to play for more people, unfortunately. So if our goal is to drop his pick rate at the higher ends of play, other changes are going to have to come into effect, and I'm not exactly sure what they are. The good news is, however, and I think this is an undisputable fact, is that the new Lucio is more fun to play. And of course, since this is a video game, and we're all here to try to be entertained, are you not entertained? I think it's a better world where Lucio stayed in the meta where he was, being a little bit harder to play, but at the very least, a lot more fun and impactful. Now, let's talk about some tips and management of Lucio's abilities. Everything he does now is quite powerful. I think especially his alternate fire boop has way more applicability than it used to disrupt things, because not only can it make massive plays, it also has this baseline impact throughout the duration of the match. And what I mean by that is, when something dives you, anything, let's say like a Winston, puts down his bubble, dives into your back line, if you just pop a Winston out, knocking it back into play like you're a goalie or something, it could be massive because Winston out of his bubble is way worse than Winston in his bubble. If Genji's dashing at you with sword, pop a boop on him to sort of make some distance between you and him. Same thing with like if a Reaper in your face or whatever. But also in general, just knocking like tanks or hit scans up in the air at like a 45-degree angle can really throw them off. Obviously, like Reinhardt wants to be swinging his hammer at close range. You put him up in the air, he can't hit. Now, although theoretically, if you put a character that does DPS up in the air, they should be able to shoot down on you. That should be an advantage for them to some degree. But if they're not ready to go there up in the air, it likely is just going to throw off their aim and also give you a predictable path of where they're going. It's much easier for you and your team to see them flying in through the air through this like really predictable arc and to line up shots on them than I think it is for them to know where they are. You want to look out to not like boop up in the air soldier sights or something, which has auto aim, but just about every other character I think is going to feel uncomfortable being knocked in the air. Maybe that's something that they get used to over time, but the new Lucio can do that constantly. Whereas before, his boop seemed a little bit hit or miss, like you didn't really know what you were going to get out of it, because there was too many factors at play. Now, if you put a little bit of an arc on it, that thing's definitely going to launch in the air like your Babe Ruth, pointing out to the bleachers saying, I'm about to hit a homer. That's what Lucio does right now. Now, other than that, I think managing your aura is actually very important. You have to make a lot more quick and impactful decisions of who you're going to be pocketing. What's the most important thing for you to be doing? I probably can make an entire guide based upon these decisions alone, but for the most part, since you have impactful healing and also can speed things around, I think the most frequent place for you to be is either pocketing a specific DPS, your frontline tanks, or your backline. One of the few at the time. You have to sort of like keep managing your time based upon what the greatest need is. Lucio was always sort of the bodyguard for Ana or Zenyatta, keeping them alive, moving them around, so that it makes it harder for the enemy to dive directly onto them. But at the same time, your DPS and tanks are scarier when you pocket them as well. The exciting thing about this is those of you Lucios that are really sick at wall riding and are able to utilize the ability to get quick bursts of speed out of it, to transition yourself between these two states of play, whether you're on the front line or the back line, that's when you start feeling oppressive as Lucio. Not to mention now, and this is maybe one of even the most important changes, I think, is to Lucio's lethality. It cannot be understated how much more lethal that this Lucio is, especially on targets that sort of square up on the ground. We're talking about McCree, Zenyatta, Soldier, tanks like Reinhardt, Zarya, Roadhog. If you master his projectile, which is quite similar to a fire rocket now, all things considered, both in terms of speed and damage, because if you hit a few headshots in your one burst, it's pretty similar to a fire rocket, which is insane. We add all these things up together with a bow, I think that Lucio is as difficult in terms of skill ceiling of a character as Ana is. Because now the value that you can be getting out of Lucio in terms of the boot plays you can do, as well as the impact frags that Lucio can get, and I can't believe I'm saying that, is a legitimate force to be reckoned with. Now the downside is that if you aren't mechanically good enough to control Lucio in this way, you may consider picking more Mercy, which is why at this point in matchmaking, I honestly advise, this is my new rule of thumb, despite the fact that I think Lucio is sick, I no longer ask anybody to play him in matchmaking, because Lucio takes so much more skill to play now that I'm afraid to tell somebody, yo, can you just press E once in a while? That's not what he does anymore. Now Lucio takes all this different management skill set and mechanical skill set. He can frag out. He's got so many more plays to make that if you aren't really comfortable doing that, I think you're going to get a lot less value out of Lucio than you used to if you just sort of stay alive and exist. Before Lucio could make a huge play, existing intensifies as he press E and amps it up. But now it's going to require you to actually get good with Lucio, which I think is something that I encourage you to do because he can be impactful now between environmental kills, key pockets, and getting kills himself, which is definitely viable. This is one scary DJ, man. He goes hard. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below. Is the new Lucio the bee's knees or what? Are you having trouble getting the same amount of value that you used to out of him? How do you feel about the effect it has in matchmaking in general? If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. It really does help us out. Subscribe for more because we upload each and every day. So you're going to want to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Linked in the description, you can check out our Twitch page, our Twitter, and our Discord server where you can interact with our community as well as find teammates to pair up with. Find the Lucio main of your dreams. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.